The arena did not roar because it loved violence. It roared because violence was the only truth it had ever been taught. Under a sky of artificial stars, the grand crucible of Kael'thar burned with light and sound. Millions of alien eyes watched from towering tiers of black crystal, their cheers crashing together like a living storm. At the center of it all stood Zyra Kael, the Empire's deadliest warrior, tall, armored in living obsidian metal, her presence alone enough to silence lesser fighters. She had never lost. She had never hesitated. And she had never belonged to herself. The body at her feet twitched once, then went still. Blue alien blood steamed against the arena floor as Zyra withdrew her blade in a single smooth motion. The kill had taken less than 3 seconds. Efficient. Perfect. Boring. The crowd erupted. Zyra raised her weapon in salute, as tradition demanded, but her mind was already elsewhere. It always was. Victory felt empty now, like repeating a word until it lost meaning. Strength. Honor. Empire. They were sounds, not feelings. From the highest balcony, the High Dominion Council stood to acknowledge her triumph. At their center loomed Overlord Carvos, ruler of the Virex Dominion, his massive frame wrapped in ceremonial armor older than most star systems. Once again, Carvos announced, his voice amplified across the crucible, our champion proves the natural order of the universe. The strong rule. The weak submit. And enemies exist only to be broken. The crowd thundered its approval. Zyra knelt, head bowed. By blood and steel, I serve. The words tasted like ash. Hours later, alone in her private quarters overlooking the endless city, Zyra removed her armor piece by piece. The living metal retreated from her skin like a loyal beast obeying a silent command. Beneath it, her body told a different story, scars layered upon scars, each one a memory the Empire called glory. She stared at her reflection in the dark glass. Once, long ago, she had believed the oath. The oath had been forged when she was barely grown, when the Dominion crushed her homeworld and gave her a choice wrapped in chains: die with the weak or live as a weapon. She had chosen life. She always wondered if that made her strong, or simply afraid. Her chamber lights dimmed automatically as a presence entered the room. "Champion Zyra Kael," said a calm, unfamiliar voice. "You are summoned." She turned, hand already near her blade. The figure standing there was not Virex. He was human. He looked almost fragile by Dominion standards, shorter, softer, wearing no armor at all. His clothes were plain, his posture relaxed. No visible weapons. No cybernetic enhancements. No fear. That alone unsettled her. "You are far from your territory," Zyra said coldly. "Explain before I decide you are an intruder." The human inclined his head slightly. "My name is Elias Rowan. I am a civilian envoy from Earth. I requested a private audience." Zyra laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Humans do not make requests here." "I know," Elias replied. "That's why I came alone." Something in his tone, quiet, steady, made her pause. "You should be dead," she said. "Our last contact with Earth ended in execution." "Yes," Elias said simply. "I studied the recordings." He met her eyes without flinching. Zyra felt it then. Not fear. Something worse. Curiosity. "The Council granted me one concession," Elias continued. "I may speak to the Empire's greatest warrior before tomorrow's trial." "Trial?" Zyra narrowed her eyes. "Trial by combat," Elias said. "Requested by me." The silence that followed felt heavier than any roar of the crucible. "You are insane," Zyra said at last. "You would last seconds." "I won't be fighting you," Elias said. Her hand closed around her blade hilt. "Then you will die faster." Elias smiled faintly. "Not everything is won with blades, champion." That word again. Champion. Not her name. "You think words will save you," Zyra said. "The Empire respects only strength." "Then it has misunderstood strength," Elias replied. "That misunderstanding is why I'm here." Zyra stepped closer, towering over him. "Speak quickly." Elias glanced at the scars along her arms, her shoulders, her throat. How many of those were earned in battle? All of them. And how many were earned for something you chose? The question struck harder than any blow. That is not your concern, she said sharply. No, Elias agreed. It's yours. She raised her blade and stopped it a hair's breadth from his chest. He didn't move. His heartbeat stayed calm. That was impossible. I could end you now, she said. Yes, Elias said softly. But you won't. Why? Because you are tired, he said. And because some part of you wants tomorrow to mean something different. Zyra's breath caught, just for a moment. You know nothing about me. I know what a system looks like when it turns people into tools, Elias said. Humans are very familiar with that mistake. She lowered the blade slightly, despite herself. What do you want, human? I want you to survive tomorrow, Elias said. Not as a weapon. As a person. She laughed again, but this time it cracked. There is no survival outside the oath. That's what they taught you, Elias said. They taught you to swear yourself to your deadliest enemy, fear, control, obedience. He took a step closer. She let him. Tomorrow, he continued, the Empire expects blood. Instead, they're going to see something they cannot conquer. And what is that? Zyra asked. Elias met her gaze. A human question, he said. Asked at the right moment. Security alarms flared suddenly. Elias stepped back. Think about what you want, Zyra Kale. Not what they trained you to want. How do you know my name? She demanded. But he was already gone, escorted away by guards who looked confused rather than victorious. Zyra stood alone again, blade lowered, heart racing. For the first time in years, the coming battle did not feel inevitable. It felt uncertain. And uncertainty, she realized, was far more dangerous to the Empire than any enemy blade. The night before the trial was always loud. Even in her private quarters, Zyra Kale could hear the distant celebration echoing through the city wrapped around. Chants, music, the constant low thunder of a civilization that lived for bloodshed. Normally, those sounds sharpened her focus. They reminded her who she was supposed to be. Tonight, they felt wrong. She stood at the wide viewing window, staring down at the grand crucible glowing like a wound carved into the planet's surface. Tomorrow, millions would gather to watch her kill again. Tomorrow, the Empire would cheer. Tomorrow, she would kneel before the council and swear loyalty she no longer fully believed in. And tomorrow, a human intended to survive her. Zyra clenched her fists. Humans were weak. Smaller. Slower. Their bodies were fragile. Their technology crude compared to Dominion engineering. The Empire had proven that decades ago when Earth's first diplomatic mission ended in public execution. Humans should have learned fear. Yet Elias Rowan had stood in her chambers without armor, without weapons, without trembling. And worse, he had spoken to her like she was still alive. Her chamber lights flickered. Zyra turned instantly, blade drawn. Elias stood near the entrance again, hands visible, calm as ever. You are persistent, she said. I didn't want to leave you alone with the noise, he replied. You bypassed security. Again. Yes. That alone is an act of war. Or an act of curiosity, Elias said. Depends who's watching. She studied him closely now, letting her battle-trained senses scan every detail. His breathing was steady. His pupils were normal. No stimulants. No implants. No hidden weapons. How? She asked. Elias hesitated, then answered honestly. Because your empire designs systems to control bodies, not minds. Humans learned long ago that the fastest way through a locked door is convincing the guard to open it. Zyra scoffed. You manipulated them. I spoke to them, he corrected. There's a difference. She gestured with her blade. Tomorrow, words won't matter. That's where you're wrong, Elias said quietly. Tomorrow, words will matter more than violence ever has. Zyra turned away from him, staring back at the arena. The trial is not symbolic. It is death. Yes, Elias said. For something much larger than either of us. She faced him again. Explain. The Dominion believes strength is measured by domination, Elias said. By forcing obedience through fear. Humans once believed the same. Once, she asked. Elias nodded. We grew out of it. Slowly. Painfully. After nearly destroying ourselves. Zyra's grip on her blade tightened. We are not humans. No, Elias agreed. But suffering doesn't care what species you are. Silence stretched between them. What will you do tomorrow? Zyra asked at last. I will ask for the rules to be honored, Elias said. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Rules exist only to entertain the council. Exactly, Elias replied. That's why they will insist on following them. He stepped closer, voice lowering. Your laws allow any form of combat as long as the opponent consents. Physical, strategic, psychological. Zyra's eyes narrowed. You intend to provoke me? No, Elias said. I intend to reveal the truth. What truth? That your empire survives not because it is strong, he said, but because no one has ever refused to play its game. Zyra felt something shift inside her chest. Refused. The word echoed louder than the arena ever had. You don't understand what refusal costs, she said. Elias looked at her then, not with pity, not with fear, but with recognition. I think I do. She saw it in his eyes. Loss. Regret. Resolve. If I refuse, Zyra whispered, they will destroy me. Yes, Elias said. And if you don't, they will keep destroying everything else. The alarms flared again, louder this time. Elias stepped back. Tomorrow, when the crowd demands blood, do not strike first. That goes against everything I am, Zyra said. That's why it will terrify them, Elias replied. He paused at the doorway. You once chose survival over death. Tomorrow, choose meaning over obedience. And then he was gone. Morning came with blinding light and thunder. The Grand Crucible was full beyond capacity. Flags of conquered systems rippled above the stands. The High Dominion Council sat elevated, watching from behind shields of glowing energy. Overlord Carvos leaned forward eagerly. Zyra entered first. The roar was deafening. Her armor flowed over her body like living shadow, energy veins pulsing with lethal readiness. She felt the familiar surge, the chemical cocktail of battle conditioning flooding her system. This was what she had been trained for. Across the arena, a single gate opened. Elias Rowan stepped onto the sand. The crowd's reaction was immediate and brutal. Laughter. Mockery. Disbelief. No armor. No weapon. Just a human standing calmly at the center of a machine built for death. Carvos rose from his throne. Human, the Overlord boomed. You stand before our champion. State your terms. Elias bowed, not in submission, but respect. I request combat under Dominion law. The council murmured. What form? Carvos asked. Elias looked at Zyra. Truth, he said. The laughter exploded. Carvos slammed his staff against the floor. Explain yourself. I challenge the champion, Elias said clearly, to a contest of will. Of choice. I will not attack. I will not flee. I will stand here and speak. The champion may strike at any time. Zyra's heart pounded. Do not strike first. The crowd screamed for blood. Carvos smiled cruelly. Very well. Champion Zyra Kale, you may end this whenever you choose. Zyra stepped forward. Her blade ignited with brilliant energy. Millions held their breath. Elias met her gaze. And Zyra did something no one in the Empire had ever seen before. She stopped. Her blade hovered inches from his throat. The arena fell into stunned silence. I will not strike, Zyra said, her voice carrying across the crucible. Not yet. Shock rippled through the stands. Carvos stood slowly. Champion, he warned. You exist to obey. Zyra's voice trembled, but she did not lower her weapon. Then let the humans speak. For the first time in Dominion history, the crowd did not know whether to cheer or scream. And for the first time, the Empire felt fear. Silence ruled the Grand Crucible. Not the natural silence of peace, but the sharp, dangerous quiet that came when an entire civilization realized something had gone wrong. Millions of voices were frozen mid-breath. The banners of conquered worlds fluttered without purpose. Even the artificial stars above seemed dimmer. Zyra Kale stood unmoving, her blade humming with lethal energy inches from the human's throat. Elias Rowan did not flinch. Overlord Carvos rose slowly from the throne of conquest. His massive form radiated controlled fury. Champion, he said, each word heavy with authority, you are delaying the inevitable. Zyra did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on Elias. The human requested terms allowed by law, she said. You accepted. Carvos's lip curled. The law exists to demonstrate dominance, not invite defiance. Elias spoke before Zyra could respond. His voice was calm, but it carried across the arena without amplification. And yet your law still binds you. That is the weakness you never noticed. The crowd hissed in anger. Carvos laughed, a low, dangerous sound. You believe words can defeat us? No, Elias replied. I believe truth can. Zyra felt the blade in her hand grow heavier, not physically, but morally. She had killed warriors stronger than Elias 1,000 times over. Ending him would be easy. Ending what he had started would not be. Speak, Carvos commanded. Entertain us before you die. Elias nodded. Very well. He turned slowly, deliberately, giving the audience his full attention. Tell me, people of the Dominion, how many of you believe you are strong? The crowd roared its approval. How many of you were born free? Elias asked. The roar faltered. How many of you chose your path, rather than having it chosen for you? Uneasy murmurs spread through the stands. Carvos slammed his staff down. Enough. Zyra raised her free hand, not toward Elias, but toward the Overlord. By law, she said evenly, he may speak until I strike. The council stiffened. Elias continued. Your empire teaches that the weak serve the strong. But I ask you this, if strength requires obedience, is it truly strength? A ripple of confusion moved through the audience. Elias turned toward Zyra. Champion Kale. How old were you when you took your first life? Zyra's breath caught. Answer, Carvos snarled. She hesitated. Then spoke. 14. A shockwave moved through the crucible. Elias nodded slowly. And how old were you when you were given the choice to stop? Zyra swallowed. I was never given that choice. The crowd stirred. Unease turned into something dangerous. Elias spread his hands. This is not strength. This is survival under threat. Carvos's voice thundered. Kill him. Now. Zyra did not move. Instead, she lowered her blade. Gasps echoed like thunder. Elias felt it immediately, the shift. The fragile moment where fear began to change direction. Empires fall, Elias said calmly, not when they lose battles, but when their weapons realize they were never enemies of the people standing beside them. Zyra looked out at the stands. She saw warriors like herself. Scarred. Conditioned. Silent. She saw technicians, workers, children watching their first execution. She remembered being one of them. You taught us fear, Zyra said, her voice rising. You called it strength. Carvos pointed at her. You were nothing before us. Zyra turned to him fully now. I was a child. The arena erupted, not in cheers, but chaos. Council members shouted orders. Security forces moved. Drones descended from the ceiling. Elias spoke one final time. Zyra Kale, the strongest choice is not to obey. It is to decide. She made her decision. Zyra deactivated her blade and let it fall to the sand. The sound was soft. The impact was catastrophic. Carvos roared. Seize them! The arena's energy shield snapped on, but not fast enough. Zyra moved. Not as a weapon. As a protector. She stepped in front of Elias, spreading her arms wide as stun fire rained down. Her armor adapted instantly, flaring defensive fields instead of attack modes, something it had never been programmed to do. "You want obedience," she shouted. "Then witness refusal." The crowd was no longer silent. They were watching history break. And somewhere beyond the Crucible, systems designed to control began to fail, because for the first time, the Empire's greatest weapon was no longer pointing outward. It was standing still. And choosing. The Grand Crucible descended into chaos. What had once been a perfectly controlled machine of death now screamed with confusion. Security drones flooded the air, their red targeting beams cutting across the arena like a web. Council guards poured from hidden gates, armored and armed, moving to surround Zyra Kale and the humans standing behind her. For the first time in Dominion history, the crowd did not cheer. They watched. Zyra stood with her back straight, arms still spread wide, her body positioned between Elias Rowan and the Empire that had forged her. The adaptive armor across her skin shimmered, recalculating priorities it had never been ordered to consider before. Protect instead of destroy. Pain bloomed as stun bolts slammed into her shields. Her knees buckled slightly, but she did not fall. "Stand down, champion." Carvos bellowed from the throne. "You are malfunctioning." Zyra laughed, short, sharp, real. "No. For the first time, I am functioning." Elias felt the heat of energy blasts flash past his face. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something else rising in his chest. Hope. "Zyra," he said quietly, "the crowd is listening." She nodded without looking back. "Then let them hear." She turned her head just enough for her voice to carry across the arena. "People of the Dominion, look at me." The guards hesitated. Orders conflicted. Protocols stalled. "I am Zyra Kale," she continued. "Champion. Killer. Weapon. I have bled for you since childhood. I have slain your enemies. I have followed every command." Her voice hardened. "And not once did you ask if I wanted to." The words struck harder than any blade. In the stands, a young arena technician lowered his weapon. A medic stopped shouting. A warrior clenched his fists, uncertain. Carvos sensed it immediately. "Lies!" he roared. "She is corrupt. She has been poisoned by the human." Elias stepped forward, raising his voice. "No. She has been awakened." A drone swung toward him. Zyra moved faster than thought. She did not attack the drone. She grabbed it, twisted, and crushed its power core in her bare hand. Sparks rained down as the machine fell lifeless to the sand. The crowd gasped. Not because of the strength, but because she had destroyed a Dominion weapon without permission. "That machine," Zyra said loudly, holding the broken drone aloft, "was built to obey without question. She let it drop. So was I." Something shifted. Across the Crucible, small acts of hesitation multiplied. Guards slowed. Commanders argued. The perfect synchronization of the Empire fractured under the weight of a single truth spoken aloud. Carvos stood, fury burning in his eyes. "You would throw away everything we gave you." Zyra looked up at him. "You didn't give me anything. You took." She gestured to the crowd. "You take from all of us." Elias spoke again, carefully, deliberately. "Empires do not fall because they are weak. They fall because they cannot survive truth." The council shouted orders. But too late. A warrior in the lower tiers removed his helmet and dropped it to the floor. Then another. Then another. The sound spread, metal striking stone, over and over, until it became a rhythm louder than the roar of the crowd had ever been. "Refusal. Zyra felt it like electricity through her veins. Carvos backed away from the throne. End this. Kill them all. And that was when the arena gates exploded inward. Not from outside. From within. Human ships had never been allowed this close to the Crucible. But Elias had never come alone. He had come with patience, with planning, with allies who understood systems better than soldiers. Human ingenuity did not announce itself. It arrived quietly, and at exactly the wrong moment. Emergency lights flashed. Systems failed. The Crucible's massive energy shields flickered and died. Elias looked up, recognition flashing across his face. Right on time, he murmured. Zyra stared at him. You planned this. Elias nodded. Not a rescue. An opportunity. Sirens wailed as Dominion command channels collapsed under targeted disruption. No explosions. No mass casualties. Just silence where authority used to be. Carvos screamed in rage as his throne's power field shut down. You think this changes anything, he spat. You are one warrior. One human. Zyra stepped forward, towering, unarmed. No, she said. I am a question. And behind her, thousands were beginning to ask it too. The Empire had built a weapon to face outward. It had never prepared for the day that weapon turned around and asked why. And the answer was coming. The Empire did not fall with fire. It fell with silence. Across the Grand Crucible, the noise that had defined Dominion power for centuries, commands, alarms, orders barked through absolute authority, collapsed into confusion. The systems that once enforced obedience now waited for instructions that never came. Zyra Kale stood at the center of it all, breathing hard, unarmed, unbowed. For the first time in her life, no command followed. Overlord Carvos staggered backward as the throne's final lights died. His armor, once radiant with authority, now looked like an empty shell. He stared out at the arena, at the guards who no longer rushed forward, at the warriors who no longer raised their weapons. Obey me, he screamed. I am the Dominion. But the words had lost their power. Elias Rowan stepped beside Zyra, his voice calm, almost gentle. You were never the Dominion. You were just the loudest voice in the room. Carvos turned on him, eyes blazing. You think this is victory, human? Chaos will destroy them without us. Elias shook his head. Chaos is what happens when people are never taught how to choose. Order without choice is just a cage. Zyra looked at the crowd, at the warriors who had lived and died by rules they never wrote, at the workers who built weapons they never aimed, at the children who watched executions instead of stars. I was told strength meant never questioning, she said, her voice carrying without effort. I was told obedience was honor. She stepped forward. I was lied to. The words rippled outward like a shockwave. A Dominion commander dropped to one knee, not in submission, but exhaustion. What do we do now? Zyra hesitated. That hesitation mattered more than any order she had ever given. I don't know, she admitted. And that honesty changed everything. Elias smiled faintly. That's how it begins. Above the Crucible, human vessels uncloaked, not warships bristling with weapons, but sleek, utilitarian craft built for communication, evacuation, stabilization. They did not fire. They did not threaten. They waited. Humanity had learned something painful in its own history. You could not force freedom on anyone. You could only make space for it. Carvos fell to his knees at last, not defeated by strength, but by irrelevance. Guards disarmed him without ceremony. No cheers followed. No execution. Zyra watched him go. She felt no triumph. Only release. Days later, the Crucible stood empty. Zyra walked its sands alone, armor dormant, blade left behind. The place felt smaller without the crowd, like a monument stripped of meaning. Elias joined her, hands in his pockets, gazing up at the silent tears. History will argue about this moment for a long time. Let them, Zyra said. I lived it. He nodded. What will you do now? She looked at her hands, hands that had only ever known violence. Learn, she said slowly. How to choose. How to live without being pointed at something. Elias smiled. Humans are very good at learning the hard way. She glanced at him. Why us? Why risk everything for an empire that hated you? Elias's expression softened. Because once, we were them. And someone gave us time instead of extinction. Zyra turned toward the stars beyond the shattered arena roof. For the first time, they did not feel unreachable. The Dominion would not become peaceful overnight. Freedom was messy. Choice was frightening. But the chains were broken, and broken chains could not be reforged easily. Across the galaxy, a story began to spread. Not of a human who defeated an empire with weapons, but of a human who asked a question, and an alien warrior strong enough to answer it. Humanity had not conquered the Dominion. It had reminded it what strength really was. And that was the most dangerous power in the universe.